Namaste, everybody. Good evening. And let's start with a prayer. Then we will just meditate for a few moments and then go into our subject. So let's sit upright. Let's take a double inhalation, tense the body. Breathe out and relax, letting go of tensions in any body part. Once again, inhale, bringing in energy into the body. Breathing out, relaxing, and one last time. Let's offer a prayer together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Great Masters of Self-Realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, our beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, our divine friend and guide Swami Kriyananda ji. We bow before you all, invoking your presence, your guidance, and your uplifting grace in our daily lives. O great masters, help us apply the teachings you have brought into our lives, that we may prevent one disease and all, that we may live in health today and always, in body, mind, and spirit, and help us share these gifts with all. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Friends, let's meditate just for a minute, feeling that we are all sitting together, about 45 of us, meditating in the living presence of these great self-realized masters. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome, everybody. And last week it made me think, and I've told actually many friends, especially, I don't know if Tushar is listening, he's a devotee in Pune, and I've told him, oh, Tushar, we should go and, just have a meal in a hospital every now and then, have a cup of tea, and then we should actually go to a courtroom also. And when I first mentioned it to him, he said, why? What's happening over there? Is somebody in the hospital? And I said, no, but when you just go and see what's happening to others, it brings a lot of awareness, the desire to not go through that. And I want to start by reading, as I was preparing for this line, Paramhansa Yogananda ji, he's such a sweet master. Through his teachings, he speaks to us all the time. And when I was preparing for today's class, which I will focus primarily, I'll focus on the aspect of prevention, even though we said prevention and disease, but that's curing or treating a disease. But we focus on not managing so much, but preventing an illness today and maybe even in the coming 1 or 2 weeks, because, I was practicing surgery. This is back in 2008. Wonderful teachers, wonderful hospital, lots of learning. And I respect that field very, very much. All fields, anything that can bring about healing. Where's the harm? Why not? But I used to think how nice it would be if this could have been prevented. And many illnesses, most illnesses can be prevented. And, especially by the time things come to a surgeon, it's a matter of your knife or scissor. And I was like, I was just not feeling happy about it. So I changed tracks. As I said, that was 2008. So as I was preparing for this week's class, this is something I found from Yogananda ji, and look how beautifully he writes. Creating happiness, that's the heading. Prevention of disease. No one wants to have appendicitis in order to enjoy the efficient services of a skilled surgeon. No one desires to suffer a terrible disease in order to utilize an effective, well advertised patent medicine, and on and on. And of course, that makes sense. But sometimes seeing those things, makes us realize that, wow, can I avoid this situation? And if I can, how do I go about it? But the important thing is to keep that in mind. And then Yogananda ji writes very humorously, some people may ask, what about the poor doctors? Because then he's talking about they should focus on prevention. And he's saying, what will the doctors do under such ideal conditions if everybody is healthy? And Master says, the answer is that doctors are necessary not only to cure disease, but also to teach people how to prevent sickness, because most people know very little about the laws of preserving their health. And then, of course, you may have heard, and Yogananda ji writes over here, this well-known teaching that in ancient China, in the higher ages, what in India you and I called Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, higher Dwapara Yuga, in those cycles of time in ancient China, it was known that doctors were paid when nobody fell ill. The whole village would take care of them. But if somebody fell ill, that's the time when the doctor was not given the money and they had to visit the home and bring the patient back to perfect health. And here now it's all opposite. First you're losing health, then you lose money, then you're losing time, and I don't want to say doctors are benefiting. It's a very strange thought, but unfortunately that's a whole different aspect. But like Master is saying, take things in your hands, and doctors should also, everybody, we should focus on how we can preserve our health. So it's a big, beautiful subject. Let's take bit by bit. Now, think of physical illness, So many researches are now coming that our physical health is affected by our mental state. Anxiety is a very classic example. I mean, I hate to state it, but Master said one of the most dreadful disease for people is death. And it's not natural death we are talking about. I was trying to talk about suicide. Somebody is mentally ill, they take their life. Wow, that's an extreme step. So on a minor level, it affects our sleep, it affects our heart rate, our blood pressure. Those things then affect the kidneys. So just on that physical level, you can see that a wrong mental habit of worrying, of anger, of anxiety, what can that lead to? Think of diet. So many times people say, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like that fruit or vegetable, and one or two things, it's okay. But if your list of what you eat is confined to only a few things, well, what about the nourishment that nature is trying to provide through so many other things? A very well-known teaching in naturopathy is that, let's say, you make a little, you might say, shopping list, you go to the grocery store, but try this next time. Make a list so you don't forget the essentials, but more importantly, go to a well-stocked store and see which color of fruit and vegetable and appearance is drawing you towards it. And so much research has now happened that you are lacking in that vitamin, that antioxidant, that mineral. Children also instinctively they start eating some things here and there because they are lacking in something, and they of course have the knowledge, but when they start eating these things, it's because there's an inner lack which is being fulfilled on an outer level. Well, let's think of that disease of death once again. Many times, I've seen this, it's one of my favorite subjects. It's my favorite subject to talk about in health. I've almost always included it, even if I get 1 hour to talk about it. And people say, oh, why do you bring up, we thought this is a health workshop. Why did you suddenly towards the end start talking about death? Because, like Yogananda ji said, in most people's mind, it is a disease, whereas it is anything but a disease. It is a friend, it is a relief that is given to people who have a broken body, or it is a rest period. If spiritually understood, it is the time to get a fresh pair of clothes, as Krishna says, that this garment, this particular body is not helping, and let us now restart, press the restart button. But much more is happening. It's a very sacred time where we are exiting. And Yogananda ji said there too, we don't have to take any of these things, whether we're talking of diet, exercise, and on those fronts, so much research has happened that if we do this, many, many things can be prevented. But I want to talk a little bit about meditation and that science of, you might say, what people call dying. Yogananda, in his autobiography, has written about this great saint who is often called the 13th apostle, the 13th direct disciple of Christ, even though he didn't meet him. And his name is Saint Paul. And Saint Paul used to tell his disciples, this is his statement. He said, verily, verily, I say unto thee, translated in today's English, truly, truly, I tell you all, I die daily, that I die every day. And Yogananda asks that simple question, how can somebody die? Most of us think we die once. How can somebody die every day? And that is what is in yogic tradition known as the state of samadhi, the state of deep meditation where we are so relaxed. There's no anxiety of death. There is a complete understanding. There's a desire to know it, know those mysteries, and there is a union with that goal where people learn, oh, instead of forcefully being, taken away, like in ancient India, they used to say, unhone pran tyag diye, that he or she surrendered the prana. Prana is what is keeping you and me alive. And when the God-given task is done, we must give that gift of prana back to the source. We were given it for some work. The work has been accomplished. Let's give it back and merge in God. But when that understanding is not there, then the second statement came, unke pran chale gaye. So and so passed away. Yogananda said, with birth, the gift of choosing and controlling your passing was given to mankind. But like I said, when that ignorance comes over us, that knowledge is gone, that familiarity, that friendship with prana is lost. And then, of course, fear of death comes, uncertainty that comes along with those things. So, anyway, in this class, I just wanted to bring about the subject of prevention, that we often don't think of it. We take it as a given that, oh, this illness has to come. Now, maybe karmically, like Swami very beautifully said, he said, if you are falling ill now, he said, maybe in God's plan, the time has come for you to fall ill. If you become poor, accept it. Not passively, but with understanding that, okay, maybe God wants me to go through this phase right now. Be equally non-attached at the same time, trying to do your best. And so it is that many times when people have illnesses, or so many people, unfortunately, I hate to say, more and more people are losing their normal state of health, we don't give enough thought to, if I live properly, not only from childhood, but anytime I make up my mind, how can I prevent disease? A simple example of that is just in the last 10 to 12 years, so much understanding has come to us that illnesses like hypertension can be treated by lifestyle 95% of the times. Pre-diabetes, again, insomnia, so many. I mean, from a yoga journal I read 5 years ago that 118 diseases have been shown to benefit by yoga practice, which is to say their severity goes down. And if you add other components to that, then we can see that many of these diseases can be prevented. And I leave us in this introductory class on prevention with one final thought. And again, this is a recent phenomena, about 30 years. First, of course, in the last century, we found out about the cell, the nucleus, the DNA especially, and genetics, the role that genetics play in many of our illnesses. What has also now come in the last 30, 35 years to everybody's knowledge is the science of epigenetics, which is exactly what Yogananda ji was saying. He was saying 100 years ago that meditation can change your DNA. It can change your cell, your hereditary. And people didn't believe that. But of course, now we know that even if there are, let's say, two identical twins, but their lifestyle is different, the amount of stress they take is different, the illnesses that they will have are going to be different. And so, if genes can deteriorate with our lifestyle, somebody asked the simple question, can they also be preserved and repaired? And that is when the epigenetics came about, that yes, you may have a faulty gene, but if your diet, exercise, meditation, pranayam, in 2009, Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn got the Nobel Prize in medicine, and she researched 50 lifestyle changes that we can bring which positively affect our DNA. And so just think of the potential. And then as we go through this series, we can make up our own list that, hey, I need to sleep more. I need to meditate more. I need to be in sunshine a little bit more. I need to change my diet. I need to start fasting, so on and so forth. So I leave us with a little exercise in the coming week. Just draw up a mental or a physical list, because it's good to have a plan. Like I said, we may not have given it enough thought, but now that we are focusing on this subject for ourselves or some family member who might be open to the possibility of prevention of an illness, write down, what is it that I'm trying to get rid of? And again, not just a physical illness, it could be a mental habit, it could be an emotional challenge, it could be like it's a very deep rooted thing, the fear of death or the unwillingness, like I said, to not talk about it. People even consider it inauspicious. Why? We have to go through it. If I have to go to a destination, I want to know everything about it and not postpone it. So let's write down which disease we are trying to, or diseases we are trying to reverse or prevent. And then in subsequent classes now, next week onwards, I'll start going more deeply in diet, exercise. There's a 10-point guide that Yogananda ji has given, and one by one, we will go in those subjects and cover the primary or the most common illnesses that we find in our times and how those can be prevented. So let's take a moment before we go into prayers to sit upright. We'll do this healing prayer for the world before we go into individual healing prayer requests. And let's see the laws of health being harmoniously applied by people everywhere. This growing awareness of staying in the state of health longer and longer and always. May we all find greater success in that. May people everywhere be more successful in preventing disease, thereby finding true happiness in body, mind, and spirit. Let's offer a prayer together. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all thy children. Manifest thy healing presence in all bodies, in all minds, and in all souls. Let's put our hands together. Channeling the healing vibration of Om to bring healing to all. Om.